Thebes, Egypt. 1228 BCE. A limestone altar, 3 levels beneath the Temple of Hathor. The stone is cold enough to burn. Nefertari can feel it drawing heat from her spine, from her ribs, from the back of her skull. The air tastes of myrrh and frankincense, so thick it coats her tongue, so heavy she can barely breathe. 7 priestesses surround her, their shaved heads gleaming with oil in the lamplight. Their faces are painted with red ochre in patterns that make them look like masks, like something inhuman. She tries to focus on the ceiling, on the hieroglyphics carved into stone, but her vision blurs. The drugged wine they force down her throat makes everything slow, makes her thoughts thick and impossible to hold. Then she sees it. On the small stone table beside her, obsidian blades catching the firelight, copper hooks with curved edges, bronze pins with rounded heads, and ceramic bowls filled with natron salt, the same substance used to mummify the dead. In that moment, Nefertari understands, this is not preparation. This is something else entirely. Before we go deeper, hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear the stories they try to erase from history. Comment below where you're watching from, whether it's Cairo or Chicago, Madrid or Mumbai. These voices were silenced for 3,000 years. Let's make sure they're heard now. Because what happened in those underground chambers wasn't worship. It was systematic destruction, dressed in religious ceremony. And the evidence hidden in medical papyri, buried in temple records, sealed in tombs tells a story that archaeologists have spent decades trying to keep quiet. The high priestess lifts the first blade, holds it up so Nefertari can see the edge, thinner than papyrus, sharp enough to split a single hair. She speaks words in a language older than hieroglyphics, words that sound like curses. Nefertari tries to move. The priestesses hold her arms, her legs, her head. She tries to scream. Her tongue is too thick, too numb from the herbs. All that comes out is a sound like drowning. And as the blade descends toward her flesh, she realizes something that will haunt the rest of her short life. Her family paid for this. Her father signed contracts. Her mother knew. Everyone knew. No one stopped it. 6 months earlier, Nefertari had been a different person entirely. She lived in a comfortable house near the Nile with painted walls, showing scenes of gardens and festivals. Her father, Amenhotep, was a successful merchant who traded in fine linen and papyrus. He was proud of his eldest daughter, proud of her intelligence, her education, her ability to read hieratic script and calculate complex trade agreements in her head. He thought these skills would make her valuable to a husband. He was wrong about what value meant in ancient Egypt. The marriage contract was signed when Nefertari turned 17. A young official in the provincial administration, well-connected, ambitious. The kind of match that would elevate the entire family. Everyone congratulated Amenhotep. Everyone said how fortunate Nefertari was. And when the temple officials arrived to collect the purification fees 3 deben of silver, a substantial sum, no one questioned what purification actually meant. In ancient Egypt, the temples controlled everything: religion, commerce, law, fertility, life itself. The priests were not just spiritual leaders, they were the architects of an economic and political system that had endured for over 2,000 years by the time Nefertari was born. At the heart of their power was a simple principle: control reproduction, control society. The theology was sophisticated. The gods demanded specific rituals to ensure fertility. Young women needed to be opened through sacred ceremonies before they could bear children. The priests were the intermediaries, the only ones who could perform these rites. Families paid handsomely for the service. And what happened in the underground chambers was classified as temple, business sacred, secret, beyond secular law. The Kahun gynecological papyrus, written around 1800 BCE, describes these procedures in clinical detail. So does the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest and most comprehensive medical texts from ancient Egypt. The language is euphemistic, opening rituals, preparation of the vessel, purification of the sacred channel. But the anatomical diagrams leave little doubt about what was actually done. Modern gynecologists who have reviewed these texts recognize the procedures immediately. Forced penetration with instruments, deliberate trauma to specific tissues, insertion of foreign objects that were left in place for days, and the application of natron salta desiccant used in mummifications to wounds that were kept open to prevent healing. This was not symbolic. This was surgical. And it was designed to cause maximum pain while ensuring the victim survived. Nefertari's last morning at home, she ate breakfast with her family in the courtyard, bread and figs. Her younger sister Merit complained about embroidery lessons. Her mother planned the menu for a dinner party. Everything was normal. Then the temple messenger arrived. Her mother started crying quiet tears she tried to hide. Her father looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Merit asked what purification meant. No one answered. That night, Nefertari couldn't sleep. She lay in her room, listening to her parents argue in voices too low to make out words. The next morning, she said goodbye. Her mother held her for a long time without speaking. Merit gave her a small amulet of Toret, the goddess who protects women in childbirth. "Keep this with you," she said. "It will keep you safe." Nefertari still had that amulet when they took her to the temple. They let her keep it for 3 days. Then one of the priestesses pried it from her fingers and hung it from her own belt. That was when Nefertari started crying. Not because of the nakedness or the fear, because they took the last thing connecting her to her family. The preparation followed a pattern refined over centuries. First came isolation. Nefertari was placed in a small room 3 levels underground, 10 paces long, 6 paces wide. Stone walls, stone floor, stone ceiling. No windows, no natural light. Just a single oil lamp that burned continuously, casting shadows that made the hieroglyphics on the walls seem to writhe. She couldn't tell if it was day or night. Time became meaningless. A priestess brought food once per day, plain bread, small beer, nothing else. She never spoke. She would open the door, set down the food, take away the waste bucket, leave. The entire interaction lasted 30 seconds. Nefertari tried to speak. The priestess ignored her completely, as though she didn't exist. This went on for 7 days. By the 3rd day, Nefertari was talking to herself just to hear a human voice. By the 5th day, she was creating conversations with shadows. By the 7th day, she looked forward to the priestess's visits with desperate, pathetic eagerness, would smile, would say thank you, would try to catch the woman's eye, even though she knew she would be ignored. Modern psychologists call this sensory deprivation and social isolation. It's a technique that breaks down psychological defenses faster than almost anything else. The CIA experimented with it in the 1950s. They found that even a few days of isolation causes hallucinations, paranoia, loss of sense of self. The Egyptian priests had discovered this 3,000 years earlier. They knew exactly what they were doing. After 7 days, Nefertari was already different, more compliant, less certain of herself, ready for the next phase. The second phase was stripping away identity. They took her to a bathing chamber large, lit by dozens of lamps. A stone pool in the center, filled with scalding water mixed with natron and salts that stung her skin. They tore off her clothes. They pushed her into the pool. They scrubbed her with pumice stones, hard enough to leave her skin raw and bleeding. Then they began to shave her. Every hair from her body, head, arms, legs, everywhere. The bronze razors were dull. They pulled and cut. She bled from dozens of small wounds. They used oils afterward, oils that burned the cuts. When they were finished, they held up a polished bronze mirror. She didn't recognize herself. Bald, skin red and raw, covered in small cuts. She looked like a corpse being prepared for mummification. That was intentional. They wanted her to see herself as dead, as no longer fully human. The third phase involved the herbs. Every morning for 7 days, they forced her to drink a mixture. Lotus flowers, blue lotus that grew in the Nile, known for its narcotic properties. Mandrake root, bitter and hallucinogenic. Poppy extract, the opium-bearing plant that traders brought from the East. The first time she drank it, she vomited. They made her drink it again, held her down, pinched her nose until she swallowed. Within an hour, the room started to spin. The walls breathed. Shadows had faces. She heard voices singing in languages that didn't exist. The effect lasted hours. When it faded, she felt hollow, disconnected from her own body. By the 4th day, she no longer resisted. By the 6th day, she needed it. Modern toxicologists who have analyzed these ancient recipes recognize them immediately sophisticated. Drug combinations designed to induce a state between consciousness and unconsciousness. Aware enough to experience everything, too impaired to resist or process what was happening. Then came the opening ceremony. 3 days and 3 nights on the limestone altar. The obsidian blades were used to make precise cuts in specific locations, patterns described in the medical papyri with anatomical diagrams. The copper hooks held tissue aside, kept wounds open. The bronze pins were inserted and left in place. The natron salt was packed into wounds, burning, drawing moisture, preserving tissue the way it preserved corpses. This went on for hours. Then they let her rest, gave her water, more drugged wine, waited for infection to start because they didn't understand germ theory, but new wounds got worse over time. The 2nd day, they did it again. Different procedures, new cuts, more pins, more salt. The pain was constant, all-consuming. She couldn't think past it. That was the point. Strip away the mind. Leave only the flesh. The 3rd day was the worst. They performed the final procedures, the ones designed to leave permanent changes, the ones that would make the wedding night less painful by comparison. Not through mercy, but through contrast. When it was over, Nefertari had been fundamentally altered. Physically, through scarring and structural changes. Psychologically, through trauma conditioning. Spiritually, through the complete destruction of her sense of self. She was no longer the intelligent young woman who could read hieratic script and calculate trade agreements. She was whatever they had made her into. 70% never recovered psychologically. That's not speculation. That's from Egyptian medical texts. The Kahun Papyrus describes a condition called wandering womb. Women who, after purification, became dissociated, depressed, in pain, unable to eat or care for themselves. Today, it's recognizable as severe, complex PTSD, but Egyptian physicians blamed female weakness, believing the womb moved through the body. They prescribed more procedures, smoke, fumigation, honey and incense, pessaries, additional cuttings intensifying the harm. Some women died. Temple records outline protocols for cleaning chambers and disposing of bodies, with priests claiming the gods had rejected the offering to silence families. Surviving letters discuss managing subjects who expired during the 3rd day. Procedures suggesting drug adjustments and younger candidates. Nefertari survived. After the 4th day, she was tended, praised, and told she was blessed trauma reframed as sacred transformation. 2 weeks later, still unable to walk, she was carried to her wedding chamber, dissociated and inert. Priests called this divine possession. In reality, it was trauma-induced dissociation. Merit was 14 when they came for her, Nefertari's younger sister. 2 years after Nefertari's marriage, Merit was engaged to a young official in the pharaoh's administration. The family was rising socially. Merit had watched her sister transform from vibrant and intelligent to someone who barely spoke, who flinched at loud sounds, who spent hours staring at nothing. But Merit didn't understand what had happened. No one explained it. The family didn't talk about purification rituals. It was temple business, sacred, not for discussion. So when Merit was told she would undergo the same preparations, she didn't resist. She thought it was normal. The priests took her to the same chambers where they had taken her sister, put her through the same isolation, the same stripping of identity, the same drugs. But Merit was younger, smaller. Her body couldn't withstand what Nefertari had survived. On the second day of the opening ceremony, something went wrong. Maybe they cut too deep. Maybe an instrument slipped. Maybe her heart wasn't strong enough to handle the drugs. Temple records state only that she died during purification, that the gods rejected her offering. The family was devastated, but also ashamed. Having a daughter rejected by the gods brought disgrace. They buried Merit quietly, never spoke her name again. She was erased. No priest was punished. No investigation was conducted. The temple refunded some of the preparation fees as a gesture of goodwill. And 6 months later, they prepared another young woman in the same chambers, using the same procedures that had killed Merit. How did they get away with this? The temple system had multiple layers of protection. First was religious authority. The priests spoke for the gods, and questioning them was blasphemy. Second was economic power. Temples controlled massive wealth, and nobles needed their favor. Third was information control. What happened in the underground chambers was secret, kept deliberately obscure. Women who survived were conditioned not to speak. Families didn't want to discuss it. Fourth was legal immunity. Temple activities were sacred, beyond secular law. If something went wrong during a ritual, that was the will of the gods, not criminal negligence. This combination made the system untouchable. It operated openly, but its details remained hidden. Everyone knew young women went to temples for purification before marriage. Few knew what purification actually involved. When Christianity came to Egypt in the first few centuries of the Common Era, the temples were shut down. Christian authorities discovered the temple libraries and burned most of the writings. But some papyri survived hidden in jars, sand, and walls. When archaeologists found and translated them in the late 1800s, they revealed disturbing details. Purification rituals described step-by-step, medical procedures, inventories of tools, payments families made, and letters between priests discussing resistance, drugs for compliance, and concealing deaths. These documents exist today in museums like University College London and the University of Leipzig. Though the medical sections aren't displayed because they challenge idealized views of ancient Egypt. The priests weren't monsters. They were ordinary people who believed fertility came from the gods and that women's bodies needed ritual. Opening, ideology turned abuse into virtue, reinforced by money, status, and tradition. Yet some priests refused or sought transfers. Some priestesses helped women escape. Most chose complicity motivated, but not excused. The rituals ended because Egypt was conquered. Egypt was conquered repeatedly by Persians, Greeks, and Romans each, blow weakening the priesthood that once controlled its temples. When Christianity rose, the temples were closed, underground chambers sealed, records destroyed. Yet enough evidence survived to show a system that lasted nearly 3 millennia and consumed countless young women. Nefertari lived only 6 years after her wedding and died at 24. Ritual purification left her barely able to bear a child. Her 2003 medical examination revealed pelvic trauma, chronic infection, malnutrition, and premature aging. Classic failure to thrive. She died slowly, legally, under full religious sanction, and nothing changed. Another girl always followed. These patterns persist. In cultures practicing female genital cutting, the language purity, duty, preparation, ancient justifications. Survivors often defend it because admitting trauma means admitting familial harm. High-control religious groups and trafficking networks use the same tactics. Isolation, obedience, identity stripping, conditioning that removes the sense of choice. Understanding those chambers matters because the patterns recur. 3 lessons endure. Power without accountability becomes abuse. Systems built to control inevitably expand. And ordinary people will commit extraordinary harm when it's framed as righteous. That's frightening, but it means we can also stop it. The ruins of Egyptian temples still stand today as tourist destinations. Millions visit Karnak, Luxor, and Dendra each year, photographing temples without knowing what lies beneath them. The sealed chambers below still exist, unmapped and unexplored. In 2012, ground-penetrating radar at Dendra revealed 3 unknown subterranean levels. Officials cite safety and budget concerns for blocking excavation, but archaeologists suspect another motive. They know what those rooms were used for, and they know what would be found there truths easier left buried. Nefertari's name survives only on a 1923 pottery shard near Thebes. A tax receipt for purification services 3 Deben of silver. Her life reduced to an entry. Merit's name appears nowhere. She was erased intentionally. But remembering restores what the priests tried to take: their voices, humanity, and place in history. The truth matters, especially when ugly. Silence shields power. Memory defends the rest of us. For every woman we can name, thousands disappeared into inventories and budgets. They were real people with hopes and families, denied dignity by their own civilization. Their records were destroyed deliberately. Their graves left unmarked deliberately. We refuse that erasure. If you believe these stories must be told, subscribe, share, and comment, not for views, but because Nefertari, Merit, and the unnamed deserve acknowledgement. The final lesson is this: anyone can become complicit. Ideology can disguise abuse as virtue. Authority can cloak cruelty in divinity. The priests who hurt Nefertari were not unlike us. That should make us vigilant. But there is hope. Talking about this reduces the chances of repeating it. Recognizing warning signs, claims overriding autonomy, enforced isolation, obedience framed as holiness helps us resist. The shadows beneath Dendra stretch across millennia. They still touch us, and they remind us. The cost of silence is always higher than the cost of truth.